Welcome to the Foul Front Podcast.
Welcome to the Foul Front Weekly After Action Review.
All right, welcome to the Foul Front AAR. It is Friday, the 28th of June, and thank God. Glad to have you guys here on the Foul Front AAR. Powered by the Waypoint Outdoor Collective, this is your source for a breakdown on some of the podcasts and content produced here in the outdoor world this week. Or it's just a review of some guy, me, your host, Ben Page, and the content that I digested and my meaningless opinions and thoughts on it, plus some of the interesting stuff that I read that week. Okay, on to the rankings. At number 8, we've got Cal's Week in a Review. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Just kidding. I just didn't find it as slick, as they often say, and that word has been dominating my vocabulary, and I went and did some investigating, realized I picked it up from the Meteor Podcast and Cal's review. Anyways, this episode wasn't as, I guess, good as some of its predecessing episodes, and this week he talks about drunk bears playing on the railroad tracks, the idea and science behind whether or not a duck or swan can transport fish eggs to and from remote water sources, and then once again, plastic in the ocean. Albeit, I do think that is a good thing to keep the rhetoric up on. Remember, it's only about 15 minutes, so if you've got 15 minutes, go ahead and check out Cal's Week in Review at number 8. All right, at number 7, we got the Duck Gun Podcast, where they're talking all about timber hunting, with a guy writing a book about timber hunting and hunting on the plains of Arkansas, which I guess I was unaware that there were plains in Arkansas, and so I guess I need to be a little bit more traveled. But anyways, their guest is really interesting, and as always, Jordan and Elliot do a great job, and there's some great discussion had there. Number 6 this week is HP Outdoors, where they interview Delta Waterfowl managing editor Kyle Winterstein. It's a pretty decent episode, and this week is just stacked where it's at because, there's a lot of great content out. But seeing that I was actually trying to sit down and write a piece for a magazine submission, keyword trying, I found that this episode was mighty interesting, actually. They talk about dogs, which dogs are like all the rage right now on the podcasts and writing. It's really interesting for me because I'm a dog lover. But I'm not at that phase of my hunting development arc. It's not about the dog for me yet. And so it really helps, or maybe it hinders my opinions on what I should be doing about it and how I should be thinking about my hunting when I don't necessarily have a dog with me. But anyways, I am looking forward to some kennel space opening up at my house and being able to get a high caliber dog. Other than that, I'm just going to have to suffice with taking my old lab out. Anyways, so they do talk about smashing a goose in front of some bird watchers, which I thought was pretty funny, and how people fall into different types and styles of hunting, and it was a decent episode. Anyways, moving on. At number 5, we got the Meteor Podcast, and this is with Bo Jackson. Yeah, Bo Jackson, the baseball player. But yikes, this one was actually kind of dicey for me. It started off kind of rough as I listened to how Bo Jackson used to hunt cats and squirrels and kill the neighbor's pigs for fun. But it did turn around, much like Bo Jackson did. And you really saw how hunting turned into a peaceful release for an adult Bo Jackson, and how getting a glimpse at who Bo is behind the bow. That was not intended. Anyways, or who he was in the blind and the tree stand, and you kind of get a glimpse at, who the man really is. It was a really interesting character / hunting stereotype character arc. All things considered, it ended off with a very interesting thing, and it's actually the title. It's called Bo Jackson and Smoked Raccoon, and apparently in the South, eating raccoons on Christmas or I think New Year's is a thing, and so I gotta try that out sometime. Anyways, moving on. Number 4, This is a new one for me. The Lone Ducks Gundog Chronicles. Like I said, it's new for me, and I picked this bad boy up from a recommendation from a listener. And honestly, it didn't disappoint. This podcast is all about gun dogs, and as one review wrote, the true Gundog podcast. The host actually does a great job, and the production level is pretty good as well. I caught him on episode 27, so there's a bunch of content out there where they were interviewing Jake Terry from Endless Migration, and they talked about, dogs and training. And the best part about this episode, I liked that it was just shared storytelling, all about their dogs and some hairy incidences they've had. Hey, that was not also intended. Some hairy incidences in dog training and hunting. So if you're into training dogs, check out the Lone Ducks Gundog Chronicles. Taking a break here from the rankings. An interesting fact that I learned this week for you that I found out was that there's a big old plume of Saharan desert dust right now over the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the southeast United States. Yeah, apparently there's this big thing called the Saharan air layer, and it's a dry, warm, and occasionally, like now, dust-filled air bubble that hovers anywhere between 5 to 20,000 feet. It usually lingers over the vast African continent, and it actually, moves over to the Pacific and weakens tropical storms, and can be extremely helpful during the hurricane season. Okay, back number 3, another new podcast for me, and as previously mentioned, Jake Terry and his new brand, Endless Migration. I'm sure you've seen it on Facebook. If you haven't, go check it out. Pretty little interesting thing. Jake Terry's quite the media marketer. So he also has a new podcast out. I think they're on episode number 4 now. So, yeah, I learned about it on the Lone Ducks Gundog Chronicles. Knew the name from having previously talked to him. And pretty interesting. Anyways, it's called the Endless Migration Podcast. And I caught him on episode number 3, where they had the editor of Wildfowl, the magazine, Joe Genzel. And they discussed some of Mr. Genzel's past experiences, new hunter recruitment, and retention in the state of hunting social media and content production, which was pretty interesting. So, like I said, you're probably thinking, damn, this dude is on number 3 of 9 podcasts this week. Dude, I drove a lot this week. So we won't always have 8 podcasts on here or articles. But if you're wondering why the news portion of this is a little light, well, it's because I was listening to so much damn podcast that I didn't have the time to read. Plus it's bad for you when you read and you drive. You're not supposed to do that. Okay, so like I said, Jake Terry, Endless Migration. It was pretty slick podcast, and I enjoyed it. And it's going on my list of podcasts that I'll be listening to. At number 2, we've got the Big Honker Podcast, episode 179, Donnie Vincent. So this week, Jeff and Andy talked to Donnie Vincent, a filmmaker, and as far as I can tell, resident conservation and badass. Talking about walking around the damn Nepalese or Bangladesh forest barefoot, chasing freaking 300-pound tigers with 10-foot-long cobras slithering around. Barefoot. This is stupid. I don't know. Anyways, apparently if the mud's so thick, it'll suck your boots off. But anyways, there's a lot of interesting stories that he tells, and the pucker factor will get you there. But it's a heck of an interview, and it definitely gets the blood pumping. Okay, now if I had any amount of respect in my production of podcasts, this is where there'd be a drum roll, and I'd do some fanfare. At any rate, number 1 for the week, for June 28th. The Hunting Collective, episode number 67, with the last subsistence whale hunters and what they can teach us. This one takes the cake. Ben O'Brien sits down and talks with Doug Clark, an author and investigative journalist investigative journalist, who spent 3 years with a group of Indonesian whalers called the Lamalarans, a group of badasses that hunt whales and then share it with everybody in their tribe. And I'm not talking just like a little tribe. I think there's like 1,500 people, and there's like 20 different little clans, and they all have their own boat. And they all, the boat is like the center of their clan, and they go around and make sure that everybody in the entire tribe or community, gets their share of whale meat, and kind of ultimate story of, sharing and making sure you help each other. But anyways, they talk about the struggles and the identity issues of the Lamalarans and what they're having and what they're going through as they struggle with modernity, and then what we can unpack from all of that. Unpack, in case you're not privy, is like a philosophical term. Unpacking it and figuring out how we feel about it and what it can relate to. Anyways, plus they talk about how you hunt and butcher the largest predator on the planet, a freaking 40-foot sperm whale. It's nuts. And apparently where they're from, you cut the meat up and into like 6-inch strips, and that's money. It's not just food, it's money. You trade that for like bananas and carbohydrates from the other tribes up north. Well, hey, as always, check out this week of the Foul Front podcast, where I interview Russell Ramsey, and we talk about some stories you probably haven't heard from Ramsey, such as hunting in Pakistan and on the steppes of the Mongolian plains, as well as some of his childhood memories. But that's not all, so go check out this week's episode of the Foul Front and send me some emails. Tell me what you hate. Tell me what you love. I like hearing from you guys and gals, and we'll see you guys on Monday with a pretty epic glassing hour podcast with a guy that has seen the world and has done some real crazy stuff behind the lens. All right, it's Jake Latondras. I'm interviewing Jake Latondras, and it comes out on Monday, and it's, as the kids say these days, lit. That was stupid. All right, hey guys, please do me a favor. Go leave a review, send me an email, and tune in on Monday. Later. That was dumb too. I'm never going to end an episode with later again. I promise.